Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. We're always trying to get to the bottom of complex topics, really understand what's going on without getting lost in the weeds.
Yeah, that's the goal, right?
Right. Today, we're going deep on something that claims to change how we learn from the ground up.
Hmm.
It's called system learnography, and it comes from a piece by Shiva Narayan Taxshila Page.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun one to dive into.
Cool. Yeah.
So, before we get into the nitty-gritty, can you give us the big picture? What's the heart of this idea, and why should we care?
Sure. This concept really throws down the gauntlet to traditional education.
Okay.
It argues that we've been creating for far too long what it calls ye-learners.
E-learners.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically people who just passively take in information, like sponges.
Right, right.
But the goal of this system learnography is to cultivate what they call X-learners.
X-learners. So what's the difference? What can an X-learner do that a Y-learner can't? What makes them so special?
It all comes down to self-driven mastery. It's not just about knowing a bunch of facts. It's about having the ability to learn anything, to think for yourself, to be independent.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, use that knowledge to be independent financially as well. Like, just consuming knowledge, you're producing it, you're innovating.
So this isn't just like a little adjustment. This
Yeah.
is a whole new way of thinking about learning.
Yeah, totally.
So what are the big ideas? What are the non-negotiables for this system learnography to actually work?
Okay, so there are three main pillars.
Okay.
First, you have to become an independent learner. This is all about figuring out how to really learn and remember things.
Makes sense.
Second, you got to be an independent thinker. That's where learnography helps you develop that deep thinking, that ability to analyze and create.
Okay, yeah, I see where this is going.
And finally, you become an independent earner. That's where you learn to take what you know and make it work for you in the real world, become financially self-sufficient.
So let's break it down, starting with those independent learners. In a traditional classroom, the teacher is the center, right? They deliver the information.
Yeah.
How does system learnography change that dynamic?
The big shift is moving away from that teacher-centric model,
Okay.
where you just passively sit there and listen.
Right.
Instead, it empowers the learner to go after knowledge themselves and really engage with it.
So it's not just telling students to be more proactive, it's actually giving them the tools and the framework to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about independence,
It
not
could-
being reliant on someone else to feed you information.
So how does that look practically? What are the mechanisms that make this active learning happen?
Well, the core mechanism is what they call Brainpage development.
Brain page development. All right, break that down for me.
Imagine you're building these super organized knowledge structures right in your brain,
Mm-hmm.
not just storing information, but making it easy to access, recall, and use, like building mental shortcuts.
Okay, I like that. It's like having a well-organized filing cabinet in your head.
Exactly.
So how does an independent learner actually go about building these brain pages? What's the process?
So a couple of key things.
Yeah.
First, they use this thing called the CROS, the Classroom Operating System.
Yeah.
Think of it as a structured system within the learning materials that guides you to pull out the essential knowledge.
Interesting.
You're not just passively reading, you're actively extracting information.
Got it.
And then instead of typical lessons, they use task-based learning.
Task-based learning.
Yeah, so you learn by actually doing, tackling challenges, and working on projects. You're applying what you learn in real time.
So is there a biological reason why this sticks better? Like, why does this active learning work better than just passively listening?
Oh, absolutely. Learnography incorporates this idea of motor science activation. Basically, it uses those parts of your brain, like the substantia nigra and basal ganglia, that are usually associated with movement and habits. And when you practice and repeat a skill, these areas help solidify that learning. It's like why riding a bike becomes automatic after a while.
The knowledge is just ingrained. So for someone listening, thinking about trying this kind of learning, what are the key takeaways about becoming an independent learner through this system?
Well, first, you'll learn things more efficiently because those Brainpage modules are built for optimal storage and retrieval.
Right.
Second, task-based learning means you remember more because you're actively engaged. And finally, you become a better problem solver because you're figuring things out yourself, not just being told the answers.
All right, that makes sense. That covers independent learners. But what about independent thinkers? Traditional education often gets criticized for focusing on rote memorization for exams. how does learnography handle developing deeper thinking skills?
Yeah, that's a big concern.
Right.
And Learnography addresses it head on. See, the traditional system often unintentionally rewards memorizing things without really understanding them.
Mm.
Learnography wants to develop these ex-learners who can analyze information, adapt to new situations, and come up with creative solutions that go beyond the curriculum.
So it's not just regurgitating facts, it's about being able to use your knowledge in a meaningful way.
Exactly.
So how does Brainpage processing of knowledge transfer, that thing we talked about, help people become better thinkers?
Well, think of it this way.
Okay.
When you build these Brainpage modules, you're not just storing isolated bits of information.
Mm-hmm.
You're building a network of knowledge where things are connected and you understand the relationships between them.
Okay.
And that interconnectedness strengthens your neural pathways for deeper understanding, which is crucial for creative and critical thinking.
Makes sense. So how do they actually encourage independent thinking? What are the techniques or methods they use?
They have a few key approaches.
Okay.
One is focusing on knowledge construction rather than just memorizing. Learners build their own understanding by creating those knowledge modules and connecting different concepts.
It's active, not passive.
Exactly. Then there's something they call thalamic relay and cyclizide processing, or TCR. It's basically like your brain's internal brainstorming mechanism, constantly making connections and sparking new insights.
So like mental cross-training for your brain.
Yeah, something like that.
Cool.
And finally, they really emphasize self-driven problem solving. Learners are given challenges and have to figure out how to use their brain pages and adapt their approach to find solutions independently.
So it's about learning how to think, not just what to think.
Exactly.
And what kind of benefits does that lead to?
Well, you develop strong analytical skills, which helps you break down complex issues.
Right.
You become more adaptable, which is essential in a world that's constantly changing. And crucially, you develop the potential for innovation and leadership because you're not just following orders, you're creating new ideas and solutions.
It sounds incredibly valuable. All right, so that's independent learners and independent thinkers. Now, what about independent earners? One big criticism of education is that it doesn't always prepare people for the real world, getting a job and being financially independent. How does Learnography tackle that?
You're hitting on a very important point.
Right.
Learnography wants to ensure that ex-learners can actually use their knowledge and skills in the real world.
Okay.
The goal isn't just a degree. It's about economic empowerment.
So how do they bridge that gap between learning and actually earning a living?
There's a big emphasis on skill-based learning. They focus on developing practical expertise that's valuable in different industries.
So not just theory, but actual applicable skills.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Then there's this idea of self-sustained learning models, where students learn how to make money using their skills, whether that's through freelancing, starting a business, or research with commercial application.
Okay.
And underlying all of this is cultivating an entrepreneurial and leadership mindset. They want to prepare learners not just to be employees, but to create their own value and opportunities.
So can you give some concrete examples of how someone who's gone through this system might become an independent earner? Like, what would that look like in the real world?
Sure. Imagine someone who's mastered coding or data analysis through Learnography. They could easily become a freelancer or consultant, set their own rates, and work independently.
Right.
Or maybe someone's developed a deep understanding of business principles. They could start their own company.
And they have the mindset and the skills to do it.
Exactly. And in a broader sense, being able to use knowledge creatively to solve real-world problems is valuable in any field, which opens up more and potentially better-paying job opportunities.
So it's not just about what you know, it's about how you can apply it to create value. Now, this concept of Learnography Delta, can you explain that? It sounds like a way to actually measure the impact of all this.
Yeah, it is. Think of it like this. In calculus, delta represents change.
Mm-hmm.
So Learnography Delta represents the positive change a learner experiences in 3 areas: how efficiently they learn, how well they think, and how financially independent they become. It's essentially a measure of progress in those areas.
Okay, so how do they measure this delta across those 3 areas? How do they quantify it?
They look at 3 specific things.
Okay.
In learning, measures how quickly and effectively someone can build those Brainpage modules we talked about earlier.
So how fast they learn and how well they retain information.
Right. Ati, in thinking, focuses on improvement in their problem solving, logical reasoning, and creativity.
So how much better they get at thinking independently.
Right. And in earning, tracks their journey from relying on a traditional job to generating income independently using their skills and knowledge.
So from employee to entrepreneur or freelancer or whatever their goal is.
Yeah,
And this Taxshila Learnography uses this delta as a key metric for evaluating a student's progress, right?
exactly. The Taxshila model uses Delta to track whether students are moving toward that goal of self-driven mastery and financial independence.
This has been a really interesting look at system learnography. To wrap things up, can you remind us of the big goals, the vision behind the Taxshila model?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
System learnography, as envisioned by the Taxshila model, aims to do more than just improve grades or test scores.
Okay.
It wants to create a society of individuals who are not only lifelong learners, but also independent thinkers who can analyze, innovate, and most importantly, be financially self-sufficient and contribute to the world.
So a society of ex-learners.
Exactly.
Can you sum up the main shifts that learnography is trying to bring about?
Basically, it's about moving from dependence on teachers to self-reliance in learning, from passive memorization to active mastery of concepts, and from potential financial struggle after education to economic empowerment through the practical application of skills and knowledge.
Wow, that's a huge shift in perspective. So for you listening, I want you to think about this. We've been talking about a learning system designed to build strong neural pathways for knowledge mastery.
Mm-hmm.
What could that mean, not just for individual potential, but for the progress of society as a whole, if we prioritize independent learning, thinking, and earning? What would that world look like? It's something to think about as you continue on your own learning journey.
It really makes you question what true independence in learning, thinking, and earning means to you, doesn't it? That's what I'm taking away from this deep dive.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time.